Nighttime creepy encounter with a road rage truck in Alaska. This story happened 7 or 8 years ago. I was a single mom living on an island in southeast Alaska. There are only 26 miles of road on the island, so it's a small place. It was a Friday night. My kid and I were scheduled to fly out of town for a long weekend in Seattle. So, I worked all day, picked up the kid and headed to the airport. Our flight to Seattle was cancelled, so we rescheduled for the first flight in the morning and headed home at about 8:30 p.m. As a side note, I wasn't a fan of cell phones and did not yet have one. After this incident, I got a cell phone. We lived about 14 miles north of town. I was tired and frustrated about our cancelled flight, so was probably driving a little faster than normal. About 3 miles from home, I came up behind a dark-colored pickup truck. The truck was going slower than I was, so I slowed down but still got a little close to the truck's bumper. I tried to pass the truck but realized I was in a no-passing zone. The driver evidently felt I was tailgated too closely because they slowed down and pulled over to the side of the road. People occasionally do this since we have only one main road on the island. I hit the gas, pulled around the truck and headed home. Immediately, the truck sped up and moved right up to my back bumper. I started thinking, okay, you're pissed that I tailgate you. Message received. Now back off. The truck did not back off. The driver turned off their headlights so I could northwest longer see how close they were. I increased my speed a little bit, hoping to get rid of this person. Then all of a sudden, the headlights came back on and the truck was inches from my car. At this point, my preteen daughter started to get a little worried. She was turned in her seat looking out the back window. It was very dark with no street lights, so we could not see anyone in the truck, which made it even creepier. The truck turned off on their headlights several more times. Each time the lights would come back on, the truck would be right on my tail. We got close to our turn off the main road into our residential neighborhood. I signaled and hoped that the truck would keep going straight. I turned and the truck turned. Our street was about 3 blocks away, but I did not want to turn down my dark road with this angry truck following me. This is Alaska. Everyone owns a gun and there are no open carry laws, so I don't turn down our street but keep driving straight while trying to reassure my daughter that everything was okay. Less than a mile from my house is a large elementary school with basketball courts, running track, hiking trails and a big playground. The school's driveway and parking lot are open until 10 p.m. for students and neighbors to use. At 10 p.m. the gate is closed and locked. I decided to drive directly to the school because there are often people there even at 8:30 at night. I drove up the driveway and into the parking lot of the school. There were 3 or 4 cars parked, but I didn't see any people outside. I parked between cars directly under a street light. The truck followed us up the driveway but didn't enter the parking lot. The truck stayed in the middle of the driveway just at the entrance of the parking lot. It was as if the driver was blocking the driveway with their truck. The driver turned off their headlights and waited in their vehicle. We waited for the truck to leave or for someone to come out of the school. And we waited. About 15 minutes later, the truck turned on their headlights, backed up and drove down the school's driveway towards the main road. We were relieved, but I decided to wait another 5 minutes just to be sure. We were tired and hadn't even eaten dinner yet, so eventually I started the car and decided to leave the school parking lot. It was only a few blocks to home. As we got to the end of the school's driveway, I turned right towards home. There were no other cars on the street that I could see. As soon as my car made the turn, bright headlights came on directly behind us. The truck had not left. The driver had hidden behind the driveway's gate, turned off the headlights and waited for us. As soon as our car pulled out of the driveway, the driver turned on their headlights on high beams and rushed right up to my back bumper. To be truthful, this freaked me out. I don't scare easily, but having that truck come right at us with bright white headlights in a very dark, deserted street was enough to get my adrenaline pumping. I couldn't keep driving around the neighborhood all night with Mr. Road Rage on my ass. This is rural Alaska, so there aren't many well-lit places with people hanging around. The only convenience store on that end of the island had already closed. Then I remembered that wonderful piece of advice about driving to a fire or police station if you are being followed. The Alaska State Troopers have their headquarters along the main road back towards town, so I headed there. The troopers have cameras that cover their entire property, so I knew if we could make it to their parking lot, I could honk and be seen by the dispatcher and any officers inside the building. I knew 2 dispatchers who worked there. The truck followed us all the way to the troopers' headquarters, 7 or 8 miles. When the driver saw me pull into the troopers' parking lot, he or she turned around and drove back the way we had come. I went inside the troopers' station and reported what happened. We didn't get a license plate, but I wanted law enforcement to know there was a crazy truck terrorizing people. I think that if I had gone directly home, the driver would have followed me. Think about it. The driver took more than 30 minutes out of their Friday night to follow us and wait around. He or she must have been really pissed off. Who knows if things would have escalated to violence, but I'm very thankful that we didn't take any chances that night. We did catch the flight to Seattle the next morning and had a very relaxing long weekend. Followed down a dark country road. Last year, I, 18F, was living in a very rural town in the middle of the mountains. Most small western towns only have one road that goes into the big city. Our road in particular was about 50 miles of empty highway, surrounded only by cliffs, fields, and occasionally a farm. At the very entrance to this road, once you enter the city, is a huge truck stop/gas station that is always packed. My mom and I were going back home after a midnight showing of whatever movie we had decided to see, and, as per usual, we stopped to fill up on gas and get a drink for the long drive. As we were leaving, I vaguely noticed a dingy older Jeep pull out the same time we did, but of course, I didn't take much notice of it. It wasn't weird that someone would be leaving the same time as us. As we started down the pitch-black road, the Jeep kept a steady pace behind us, again not weird, until it came flying up past us before disappearing behind a hill. Mom and I just scoffed. We were going 60, but when people knew the roads well, they often drove them at close to 100, even at night. Eventually, we came up to the Jeep from before. It was pulled over, but the back half of the vehicle was in the road, and what was clearly a man's arm was waving out the window, gesturing for us to pull over. Of course, we pass it. The man flies past us once more and pulls over again. He does this once more, and my mom and I begin to get very nervous. After passing him for the 3rd time, he flies up and begins tailgating us. He's driving so close that we can't see his headlights in the rear view mirror, and he's honking his horn every so often, waving his arm for us to pull over. He carries on with this for 30 minutes. Mom and I are terrified. She's white-knuckling the wheel. I'm holding a pocket knife to make myself feel better. I swore at my mom for the first time that night, begging her, "Don't you fucking dare pull over." If you've ever seen the movie Rest Stop, that is all that was going through my mind. The road is a dead zone for service, so we couldn't call the police or anyone. The picture of us dead or worse on the side of the empty road was the only thing I could think about. But, as soon as it had started, it ended. The man slammed on his brakes, turned around, and went back. The ride home was silent, and I ended up sleeping in my mom's room out of fear. The next morning we had a discussion and came to the conclusion he had seen 2 lone women traveling at night and thought we'd be easy pickings, which he would have been right. Some people suggest that he had seen us drop money or a receipt at the gas station and wanted to be a good Samaritan. I think that's ridiculous. Nobody following 2 women home in such an aggressive manner has good intentions. We moved out of town a few months later for unrelated reasons, but just before we did, the same car was reported following a group of 4 men on their way to work. So, maybe he just likes to scare people. Either way, that night was easily one of the scariest of my life. Road rage car follows me home. As I'm at an intersection not too far from my house, there was a car from the opposite side of the road turning into where I'm going, and we almost hit each other. We both stopped on time, and it was no biggie. But the guy in the car is noticeably yelling at me from inside his car, giving me the middle finger. Alright, so I let him go ahead, and I thought that would be the end of road rage for tonight. Boy, was I wrong. Immediately after I let the guy through, behind him was a car turning very fast, so I accelerated and quickly got in front of him. Not out of ego or anything, I just thought that considering the position of my car in the turning lane, it's likely that this dumbass would hit me. Right afterwards, This guy is obviously pissed off and starts flickering his extremely bright lights at me for a minute straight. It was annoying as shit, considering something brighter than the goddamn sun is shining at me for a minute. You can tell it's fucking hard to navigate at night like that. So I said to myself, two can play at this game, fucker, and I slowed down to 20 miles an hour from 50, for a minute or so. Still flicking his lights, but not as much at this point. At this point I was close to home and turned into my subdivision, thinking this whole saga would end then and there, but holy fuck. This guy follows me into my maze of a neighborhood, and I get near my house and he's still following me. I freaked the fuck out and was wondering, should I just park in my driveway and he'll go away, or should I just go into a random neighborhood and lose him there? So as soon as I pass my house, I decide to go right past it and into another neighborhood couple minutes away, and he follows me exactly to there. At this point I left that neighborhood and I just fucking jumped on my gas pedal and sped down the road and made a random right turn. At this point he's still following me, but it's a red light for him, so thankfully he stops, and after that he lost me. Honestly, this was a scary experience for me, considering my suburb isn't too far from very dangerous hoods where gunshots can be heard often. Who knows, if I would have stopped my car at home, maybe this guy would have got a gun out and shoot at me. It's just fucking creepy how this road raged asshole easily followed me to my house in an obvious attempt to scare me. Road rage driver tries to follow me home. This happened to me a few years ago. I was driving home late at night, and came to a large roundabout a couple of miles from home. Another car, a distinctive red coupe, ended up in the wrong lane, and cut right across the front of me with zero warning. I braked hard, and honked my horn. Thankfully I avoided them by inches. As they accelerated off the roundabout, in the same direction as me, they stuck their hand out of the window to give me the finger. I didn't respond. I was just glad to get out of there without damage. The other car went to turn right at the next junction, and I went straight on. But as I carried on, I looked in my mirrors and realized they hadn't turned off. After a couple more turnings, they were still behind me. I then made a couple of strange turnings into side roads that essentially went back on themselves, and still they were there. I was now sure they were following me. In a bit of a panic, and realizing I didn't know where the nearest police station was, I came up with a plan. I pulled over around the corner from home, and turned off my lights, but kept my engine running. Sure enough, they pulled over behind me, and a guy got out. As he walked closer to my car, I gunned it. The best racing start of my life. Even got some tire squeal out of my Ford Focus. I was close enough to home that I only had to turn a couple of corners, and pull into my gated car park, which is hidden from the road. I now know where all the police stations are near me, in case it happens again. It definitely wasn't a foolproof plan. If I'd stalled, it could have been a lot worse.